Welcome back. And we want to talk more with our AI guru, Joe Papa, about the common myths of AI. I think a lot of people start off with this notion that AI is some kind of superhuman tool and it is infallible. And Joe, I suppose you probably could tell us many reasons why it is not.
So yeah, I mean, it's imperfect. It's an imperfect technology, and even just considering ChatGPT for a second, that we know that ChatGPT can give out false information, right? You need to fact check it. It's a fundamental concept of machine learning in general, which drives AI, is that it's imperfect. If you look at any model that's ever been developed in the research community, there is no model that is 100% accurate. No model. If a model is 100% accurate, it has not been trained with enough data to handle the task in a general sense. It's just everybody that works in machine learning knows that. So the question becomes, how do you deal with the imperfections, right? So you have to think about, and this is very important, I don't think people think about this enough in business. When you look at your business and look at the application where you're using this AI technology, you have to ask yourself, what do we do when the imperfect case arises, right? When AI gets it wrong, when AI gets the results wrong, what do we do? So you have to look at the case that you're using. If you're a writer and you're writing articles, well, you know AI is going to get it wrong in some cases, so you got to have a human fact checker or rewrite articles or whatever that might be. But if you're doing something in that's more critical, like think about the health industry. Mm-hmm. If you're a company and you're evaluating some medical images and you need to make a decision whether somebody needs another step of diagnosis or whatever the next step in that process is you got to be able to deal with the case of getting a false positive, right? Like maybe somebody's going to be identified as having a problem and they really don't have a problem. So what's the impact of that? Well, maybe they go to a next stage and an actual, human doctor looks at them and does another layer of verification. So there's no harm, no foul. But if you're an identification system and let's say you need to identify a gun that's going through an airport, right? Well, what if you miss it, right? That's a case where that could be very harmful to people. So how do you handle that? How do you understand the different models that are involved in machine learning, and what are the likelihood that things can be imperfect? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself when you're looking at this technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the quality of the inputs, to a certain extent, like the data. Is the data good? Is the data corrupted? Are the prompts good? I think ultimately what you get into AI is what you get out of AI is what you put into it. I think another big myth, and something that is probably top of mind if we're still on the thread of AI, is that AI is going to replace all jobs, that in the next in our lifetime even everything is going to be run by robots and we're just going to be sitting around being catered to. Why would you consider that to be a myth?
All right, so we don't have to work anymore, right? AI is doing everything for us. Well, we kind of joke about that, but I think that's one of the most powerful, opportunities for us for AI is to give us back time in a lot of ways in our lives. But in terms of replacing jobs, I mean, that's one of those fear thoughts that people have is AI going to replace me in my job? And as a business owner, that could be a threat too for your own business, right? Like you don't want to become the next Blockbuster. Right? So you have to look at your business and you have to consider what capabilities are available today, what's coming in the future, and how do you adapt to that and adjust to that in your business, because there's a lot of opportunities to adapt and adjust. New opportunities come up. So that's one way to look at it. From a jobs point of view, right? There's a saying that goes, AI is really good at doing tasks. It's not really good at doing jobs right now. So right now, where we are now, you can't just put an AI in there and replace somebody, right? It's like, hey, Chris, see you later. Here's the AI. I'm going to take over the whole host role here in this video series. So it's not there, but maybe there's some opportunity. Maybe AI here could fix some of the voicing, or maybe augment the video, or maybe improve the quality somehow. There's opportunities for that. So AI is really good at doing tasks. It's not really good at doing jobs right now, but maybe it will. It doesn't matter. No matter what business you're in, no matter what job you're doing, just stay on top of this thing and adjust and adapt. Look for ways to adjust and adapt as it's coming.
I think another big myth, and certainly ChatGPT made us all believe this, because, man, it seemed like it was capable of understanding and experiencing emotions. But I think that's obviously a myth as well. AI is not. It is basically creating something synthetic that may be able to pull your heartstrings based on the natural language processing, that it's been taught, right? But it is not really capable of experiencing human emotions.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely in the top 5. It's one of the top questions I get all the time. Is AI sentient, right? Can it feel? Does it have self-awareness? And no, it can't. No, it doesn't have self-awareness. That's the answer. It creates the illusion of maybe doing it. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, what's really going on here is you have a bunch of text that's being input to this computer system. And the computer system's job is to output text. It's going to give you an answer. It's going to give you some answer. Now, technology has just evolved to the point to where the answer it gives you, or the results or the output it gives you, seems like it's something a human would write. So it seems like it's coming from another human. And I crack up all the time. I hear these stories, maybe you do too, of where people are naming their chatbots now. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I've heard stories where people have like this whole staff and they have all these different tabs open, and the one tab might be, John, who's the marketing person. Another tab might be another instance of ChatGPT where it's Mary, who's mm-hmm. in the operations department. So, but they all have like separate roles and separate names, and they're creating these personas, which is fun. It's cool. It enhances the human experience, from this angle, to feel like you're communicating with a person, but it's like when you're watching a movie and you're just so into it, you're part of the movie, and then at some point you kind of just realize it's not real. Like you're not really there, but it feels like it.
Well, I know, but how much longer is it going to last before you get to that point where you've seen the whole movie and then you're asleep and then you wake up and you went, oh wait, none of that was real. Because it's some of the blurring of those lines is becoming more and more a bigger deal. So when you're talking about AI, no, it's not sentient. I guess that's the other, I would say, the mega myth. It's obviously the thing of science fiction. It's the thing of the Terminator. I think, what was the neural net on the Terminator that it became sentient? Skynet, right? So there's this idea that AI is at some point going to get smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, and then outsmart us. And it's going to take over the world. Is that a myth, or is it not?
Is it a myth that
AI will take over the world? Yes, because that is a common perception. That is a perception I think many people share, is that at some point it's just going to outsmart us.
I hope that's a myth. I don't see that happening. Here's the thing, and this will scare some people because you don't hear this, but you will. This is what's coming, especially this year, is that as we move from generative AI, where things like ChatGPT are creating text now, is we're moving to other things. And, whether it's images, videos, artwork, now we're moving to actions. So you're going to see this, and we're seeing this already. There's applications out there where you can say, go book me a vacation in Italy. Here's what I like. Here's the food I like. Here's the places I want to go. And you'll have a chatbot that'll go out there, actually book the whole trip for you. Book the flights, book the hotels, tell you where you want to go to eat, plan a whole itinerary if you want, and take all that action. And now you just got to go. that when you get into the point where now artificial intelligence or machine learning is starting to make decisions for you and also take actions, now you have to have the checks and balances in place to make sure that it can't do something it's not supposed to do. Classic example. Again, you want to get afraid of some things. Here are some real possibilities, not AI taking over the world. But you look at self-driving cars, right? So self-driving cars, which in my opinion is over-marketed. The capabilities of self-driving cars right now is not what a lot of people think it is. But the capabilities are pretty good. The cars have cameras and they have, LiDAR, radar, some of them have radar. And then they're making decisions on where to turn the wheel, where to press the brake, where to press the accelerator. And that these car manufacturers need to put these measures in place to make sure there's not some malfunction where there's an error in the code or somebody hacked into that system and is now all of a sudden going out there and just all of a sudden telling all the self-driving cars in that area to go and accelerate towards some target, for example. So security and cybersecurity, security, fail-safes, ability to build systems and put these measures in place to make sure when artificial intelligence is allowed to take actions that there's just no way that it can do something to harm somebody.
Well, I do think that one of our, main ideas with Princeton Kaizen is that Kaizen, continual change for the good, is really the only default setting for AI. You've got to just make sure that you're moving humanity forward. And if you can program it and create the constraints within the system, in the right way, which we can and will continue to do. I guess there's a point at which we just wonder when the singularity occurs, and it just sort of says, I'm not going to listen to your overrides anymore, and Hal takes over. But right now, the party line is that it's a myth that AI is going to take over the world.
It's such an interesting topic to me because there's a possibility when you're not involved in building the technology that you can't control it. So I'll give another example. Work with a lot of businesses in the home services industry. So consider like a plumber, where at some point you have some robot that comes out. And I believe there's robots now that go out there and fix cars and things like that. You have the robot that comes out, and now humans are coming with it. But robotics is such a, it could be a dangerous field because you got to make sure that these big hunks of metal don't lose control, right? It's like if you have some robotic plumber that goes into somebody's house, you got to make sure that it doesn't malfunction or that there's measures in place that it doesn't harm somebody. Mm-hmm. It's a big, big responsibility, and in that regard, governments will be. It's their responsibility to stay on top of that regulation-wise.
Well, I think the next key question, and one that at Princeton Kaizen that we're super focused on evangelizing, is the idea that AI is not just for large corporations. AI is something that, in fact, smaller businesses can use more effectively. Like, as I think we discussed in one of our first conversations, like if Pepsi and Coke, if one of them had a little bit of an edge in AI over the other one, I don't think it would be as big of a difference because they have the wherewithal to build the mechanical Turk model, to do the stuff, the old-fashioned way. The efficiency and the kind of speed to market capabilities that you get with AI, from messaging to communications, whatever, can be in many ways of more value to small business. And I think that that's probably a big myth that we want to focus on, is this is not just for, the Fortune 500 companies to figure out, and then, in a year or two, we, the small business owners, ought to figure out if we can wrap our head around it next. That's, I think, a major myth, and something that we're both focused on, is like sort of evangelizing against that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think ChatGPT broke that myth apart once it came out. Then now the general public can see that these tools are low cost, they're easy to use, and you can capitalize off the technology that other companies have spent, millions and millions of dollars to develop. Right? You look at how much was invested in from OpenAI to develop the GPT algorithms that are driving the application. I mean, they're not the only one, certainly not the only ones. I mean, Google, Apple, look at your cell phone. There's hundreds and hundreds of AI technology components within your iPhone or your Android phone. Google, Meta, Facebook has been developing this, tons of technology. There's so much technology Meta has not released. Yet there was actually recently in the news the voice box, their voice box model, which is a audio generation where you can voice clone, you can create human-like voices. That's being developed by them. There's so much investments that are being made by these companies, and now Microsoft with their investment in OpenAI, that people can use these and it's low cost. On top of that, most people aren't aware of this, but the underlying technology is also made available to other technology developers through what is called an API. So this, it stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a way that other developers can build applications and tools that allow you to use the underlying models in different ways for different use cases. And that's really what we're seeing right now is the explosion of all these new tools. Chris, I talk about one particular tool that we use called Jasper AI, which is a writing tool. But Jasper under the hood is making calls to GPT, it's making calls to Bard, it's making calls to Claude. It uses a variety of these different generation tools. And it's the backends run from them. So because that structure, the way that the technology is structured now, it's widely available and accessible, and people are building easier to use specific applications. It's fueling the opportunities out there.
Unbelievable. I'm going to jump over this particular myth that AI understands context like humans, because that sort of seems like it's not that big of a myth, unless you have something on that one.
That's interesting. So AI does not understand context like humans. Is that a myth? Well, AI doesn't understand anything. I mean, I think that's really what the myth is. There's no understanding like a human understands something. These tools, the generation tools, are not based on understanding. They're based on a computer program that have, these knobs are being turned when it was trained with all this data. Now there's a model that's created. The model is given inputs and it produces outputs. That's what this boils down to. There's no understanding. You put a prompt into the ChatGPT or a chatbot and say, what's your understanding of this? And this is what used to happen in the early days of ChatGPT is it would give you an answer that says, yeah, I understand it. Here's my understanding of it. And we go on to explain it. And that's just text creation. It's not, the tool doesn't really understand it. It just says something that would make you think, you asked it to give you an answer. So it's giving you an answer. Now, ChatGPT does have other measures in place where it's looking for things like that, and it won't respond that way. Now it will respond with, I'm an AI tool. I don't have an understanding. I can't answer that question because it doesn't want people. There are people that will go and use these tools, right? And I have to admit, even being in technology and having a deep understanding of how these things work, there's often times I lose myself and think that I am interfacing with a human being. It's interesting in that regard. But I think of people, that are out there that may think like they're really interfacing with something that's human-like.
Yeah, I guess I should revise my statement on that, because I think you're right. This is a myth that AI understands context like humans, and probably it is the one where people get frustrated with, say, ChatGPT. Like, well, listen, I asked it to do this task, and then I said, no, that's 2x, and it didn't quite understand, and you realize sometimes that you had like the wrong word in there or something along those lines, and you have to be super clear on nuance and super clear on context, because you have to provide the context and you have to provide the nuance. It can't contextualize, an idea until you've kind of given it all the little, all the pillars, all of the story background, all the character background, everything that you need to tell that particular story. I would like to close with, what I think actually is the biggest myth, which is that AI is completely autonomous, that it is this thing that is able to function purely based off of synthetic, data. It is a 100% machine based. They're still training ChatGPT. They're still training all this stuff. I think that's maybe the question I have for you. It feels to me like that is what happens between, say, GPT-3 and GPT-4, is that there's this level of almost, is there a heuristics model that go into this? Are we teaching it? Like, what's the process of a kind of like training and teaching this assistant, not an autonomous partner, but an assistant, right? Why would we think it's autonomous, and why are we wrong?
So let's talk about autonomy first. So by autonomy, do you mean it can give you the answers without giving a lot of information? Is that what
it's 100% self-contained, is what, and it could be internet. It could have internet access, but it is able to make the decision on its own. Doesn't need training. It doesn't need anything else. It is fully capable. I think this means it's sentient, to a certain extent. Wouldn't you?
Okay, let's dissect this. We're getting into good stuff here.
Okay.
So the first thing is not sentient. Number two, number one, the AI. So let's back up a little bit too. We talk a lot about AI, but we really a lot of times we don't talk about what we mean by AI, right? So to me, AI is really any kind of technology that can do something a human normally would do. It's a general word. There's no set definition of what artificial intelligence or AI is. You ask 10 people, they're going to give you 10 different answers. It doesn't really matter. A lot of times when people are talking about AI, they're talking about ChatGPT, right? Especially nowadays. For tools like ChatGPT, nothing that you're doing, nothing you're putting in prompts is training the model. Okay, and that's a lot of people get confused about this. So I want to kind of clarify that. The model was trained originally, and by the model ChatGPT, let's say ChatGPT was trained with speculatively, right? OpenAI has never really said exactly how they've done this, but there's some information that leads us to believe that they used information from the internet, from books, from Wikipedia, all this digitally generally available to the public information, text information, to train the model up to about 2001, right? At the end of 2001 is when the data stopped. 2021, yes. 2021. The data stopped, and that's where these models were trained. So by training, we mean we're sending in all this text information, and the models are tweaking their parameters, and now they have a way of computing the outputs of things and generating text. When you create new prompts, really what you're doing is you're just giving it more input to work with. You're not training it. So we talked about the myth about, AI can understand context, was the wording? So we talked about how it doesn't understand, but the context is really the inputs you give it. So the first prompt, when you're using ChatGPT, you give it the first prompt, and it generates something. Well, then you give it the next prompt. So the next prompt might have a little bit more context to it, right? You may try to correct it. And then the third prompt is even more context. So in a sense, you're not technically training the model from a machine learning point of view, because you're not changing anything in the model. You're just giving it more input. And by giving it more input, it gives you a different output. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And I think that it really comes down to, why is it important that we dispel these myths? And I think that really is a matter of, being able to make informed decisions about application and management of this, breakthrough technology. And you have a training series on that very topic of AI for Business Mastery coming out. Would you care to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So very proud about this. AI for Business Mastery is really a collection of everything that I've learned from the research and development side and building AI technology and working in research and development for over 25 years. Combining that with decades of experience of starting businesses, growing businesses, and running companies. And the goal of the program is to help business owners and business leaders understand AI and take advantage of the opportunities that AI presents to them in this world today. Okay? And the way I look at it, ultimately, what it comes down to is that being able to use AI allows you to have a greater positive impact in the world. Whether that's with your own life, freeing you up from your business, right? If you're working 60-hour weeks, maybe you get to work 10-hour weeks by implementing or infusing AI into some of your processes. It helps your employees' lives, right? Maybe they can get to a point where they're twice as much productive in half the time that they work. And now you go to a 4-day work week or a 3-day work week. Right? Think about how happy employees would be if they only had to work 3 days a week. They still made the same amount of money and they had twice as much impact on your business. AI is freedom. It frees us up. The quality improvements that AI can present is phenomenal. So if you look at things, especially in the healthcare field, where if AI is so much more effective in diagnosing things or coming up with better solutions, then that added quality just makes our lives so much better.
We'll be back right after this.